Hi everyone, welcome back to Dave's Whiskey Reviews. Today we've got mystery review number 23, I hope. So we've got this small sample here that was just poured by my wife from the collection of sort of samples and bottles that I've got here. So the same kind of rules as usual. And we will have a look and see what we think this sample is. In terms of the colour, it's looking very much like just a normal gold, which tells us absolutely nothing at all. And then we will have a bit of a look at the viscosity and see if that can tell us anything about this whiskey. Might just take a moment for those legs to sort of collect and then to fall down, especially if the whiskey is as viscous as this, because it's looking like it's quite a high viscosity. Yeah, very high. The legs are very thin, they're taking quite a long time to sort of fall down the glass. So that's telling me it might be a little bit of a higher strength. So initially nosing this is quite a sort of Speyside Scotch style of whiskey, single malt. It's got that kind of maltiness, but it's quite creamy, it's quite light, it's got sort of vanilla and strawberry, that kind of thing, which is normally something I get more with grain whiskey, but often you get this kind of, even at 40% grain whiskey, I tend to find you get this kind of ethanol or almost more like a, it's not even like a spirity sort of hit, it's more like a nail polish remover sort of note to it. Ethyl acetate, that type of thing, I think it is. Whereas this is a bit more full-bodied, it's a bit more malty, even sort of slightly oily, even to the nose. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those sort of slightly higher strength, slightly older single cask whiskies, because there is a bit of oak to it as well. It's quite dry, it's quite a floral style of nose, and a little bit grassy, like a Glenlivet type of thing. Yeah, that creamy strawberry thing is really interesting. It's actually quite delicious. Let's have a taste. Straight away the oak hits you. It's quite complex, so it's got this oak and leather and chocolate and malt, and it's all quite oily as well, especially into the finish. And the finish is quite long, which is good for sort of, I'm starting to think this is, oh, and lovely chocolate. A sort of lovely cocoa chocolate powder kind of note in the finish there as well. Reminds me actually of a Balblair. Balblair is often quite light. It's that sort of Glenmorangie, Highland sort of style of whiskey. It's quite light, but it's got this kind of biscuity, creamy, leathery sort of notes as well. And in terms of the viscosity, I mean, that's working for it as well, definitely. Because Balblair almost always bottle their whiskies at 46% at least. Equally, it could be something completely different. It's quite complex with the spices as well. You get this sort of ginger kind of thing going on, black pepper maybe, and some sort of clove or cardamom. It's nice, but it is quite intensely oaky. It's not necessarily, really balanced with, what I quite like with old whiskies is when they have a balance between the freshness and the vitality that they kind of still have, this fruitiness, but they've also got, that spiciness and that complexity coming from the oak. So it's definitely got that side of it, but it hasn't really got anything balancing it from that sort of freshness side, from the fruity side, particularly on the taste. On the nose, it's a little bit better because it does have that creamy sort of strawberry thing going on, which is coming out more and more actually over time. It is reminding me a little bit as well of some of those whiskies that perhaps taste a little bit older than their years. I remember I had a Glenelgan from Signatory that was perhaps a little like that. But definitely this one is from a bourbon barrel or a hogshead, I would have thought. Probably more likely a hogshead. So either I think it's quite old, or it's a little bit older than, or it tastes older than it actually is. And there's a Highland Park I had that was a little like this. It was quite harsh and quite bitter, even though it was quite old. I think it was like 1979 or something. It was bottled at about 30 years old, but that was quite intensely spicy and intensely bitter coming from the oak. And it's kind of this particular whiskey, whatever it is sort of showing perhaps the worse off side of aging whiskey for a long time in hogsheads. Sometimes they can be fantastic. Sometimes these whiskies aged in hogsheads can age really, really well over a long period, and have this kind of this freshness from the distillery character, but still have the complexity of longer aging. Equally, sometimes you get whiskies like this where it's quite intensely bitter and tannic and oaky, coming from that long maturation, and it's just completely covered everything else. So I have a feeling that's a little bit what's happened here. But to me, it doesn't really have that Highland Park characteristic of maybe those sort of heathery notes or those orangey notes. So I don't think it's that. But then again, perhaps it wouldn't be. If it was aged for such a long time, it's had a chance to cover that distillery character. So I'm going to have to make a choice here about what I think it is. You run through so many options, you end up sort of overthinking it all, I think. You think about, all these different things that it could be. I just need to sort of think back to that sort of initial reaction I had. The strawberries and cream on the nose, light nose, very oaky, very tannic on the taste. What could that be? Old grain whiskey, but I thought it was too malty, it was too oaky for that. Some sort of older Speyside. I don't think it's Balblair. You normally get this kind of Hessian, damp dunnage notes, I find, with Balblair, which are really nice and very complex. And even the oldest Balblairs I have had have always been balanced by that, by something else, by some kind of fruitiness that's still there from the distillery character. And this one's a little bit overblown. So I think I'm left with the Glenelgan, which I think was 1995 Signatory Vintage Unchill Filtered Collection. 46%. I don't think this is cask strength. Or perhaps it is, but from the old age it's been brought down to it. Yeah. Let's go with that, Glenelgan, and we will see here with the reveal. Oh my God, really? That is mental. So this is, in fact, a Brayville, or as the distillery is sometimes more commonly known, Braes of Glenlivet, which is from That Boutique Whiskey Company, from batch 1, 47.2%, and does not have an age statement, which is amazing. The That Boutique Whiskey Company do put age statements on the whiskies now, but they didn't anyway for a long time, especially from the first batches, from the initial batches. So that kind of makes sense. But I do think this one is older from tasting it. But yeah, very odd. Again, another distillery that you definitely don't see a lot of, Brayville or Braes of Glenlivet. I don't think there's an official bottling or anything. Could be in the works at the moment. We're seeing a lot of distilleries putting out new official bottlings with the popularity of single malt. But you're only really going to be able to find Braes of Glenlivet as an independent bottling. I know Cadenheads have done a few. That Boutique Whiskey Company, of course, but there's not even that many others. Again, a very, very difficult one to sort of pick out the distillery character and to know, what it is, because I think I've only had this one Brayville, and I don't think I've had any others. But I was on with the Strength Scotch single malt whiskey, the Region Speyside, I think. but it's good fun. It's good fun as always. So I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon, I hope.